Hey everyone, Dogmatic71 here, and welcome to Dogmatic DIY. Welcome to part 2 of my workbench. Today, as you notice from the original, I did update my drawing so you can see some little dimensions and some little lines going around the centerpiece. So these are going to be actual tracks. What I'm going to do is that way I can put a T-track around it, so if I need to exact sizes, I'm going to end up putting like a measuring tape as well. So once I get the center of 0, like from whatever I'm using, like the saw, I'm going to try to make the saw, the table saw, and the jigsaw, whatever, at absolute 0, and then I can put one of those tapes inside the track so I can measure exactly how far to cut, right? So like a normal table saw, and then I can use the T-track to clamp it down, so when I'm cutting pieces of wood, then I can clamp down the dimension so it's easier to cut. So for this part, I'm going to make the router table. Okay, so what I have is I have this router I got. Comes with 2 connections, but I'm going to probably use this one just because this one has a little bit more tweaking. This one here is the you push it right to get what you want and then clamp. This one here, it's just easier to fine tune it down here, and it also has my dust collector underneath. The other one, I can get a dust collector to go on the top piece. As you can see, this top piece is different than this top piece, so I'm going to use this one as part of the table instead. It's still, I can pull it straight out by unclamping it and everything and making it as one of these, a hand router instead of a table router. So but this will work. I feel this one will work better than this router holder or whatever you want to call it. So first thing I wanted to do is I didn't have a dimension here, but it's going to be a 12 by 12. So first I cut 3/4 inch plywood. Since my bench is 3/4 inch plywood, I cut a 3/4 inch plywood piece, 1 foot by 1 foot. And also, if you notice on the table, pencil marks might not be very deep, but I measured over, so I do have the 1 foot by 1 foot. Now, the one thing you can't do is don't cut this at 1 foot by 1 foot, or else this will just fall right through. So what we're going to do is, I have this one router bit. I'll show you what the bit is. It's that bit right there. So I adjusted it. So from here up to the router bit, the cutting mark is only 1/4 inch. So I did a little sample here, as you can see. It's 1/4 inch. So I'm going to cut this 1/4 inch here, and then I'll take this measurement of how much it's in, and then I'll measure in here that distance, and then I'll cut, and then I can router around here the same distance. That way, when this is routed and has this lip, it'll fit right into this hole, and then I can clamp it underneath. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, since I just want to make sure I had it right, so always test it first. That's what I mean. I don't use a router an awful lot right now because I just actually got this router. So it's always good to test on a scrap piece of wood, to make sure you get the proper dimensions and make sure everything looks good. So since I got what I wanted and it worked the way I did, I'm going to router all around all 4 sides. I'm using on the rough side. This side is the one I'm going to router. The other side's a little smoother and it's nicely sanded. I want that as the top, to go on top of the bench. So I'm going to router this, and then we'll take it to the next step. Okay, so now, as you can see, I put a little edge on all 4 sides now, as then you can see. I'll try to see if you can see the measurement. So I'm almost 1/2 inch. So you want to leave a tiny little gap. So I can make the edge on the table here 1/2 inch in on each side. So I'll do 1/2 inch there, and if you can see, it's about it's hard to tell, but it's hard to see but it's about a 1/4 inch depth. I know it's hard to see, but so it's about a 1/4 inch depth. But I'm not going to move my router bit, so it should hopefully match the table. So what I'm going to do is, since it's a 1/2 inch and 1/2 inch on both sides, I'm going to go around here and do a 1/2 inch in on each, all the way around 4 sides, and then I can cut it out based on those, and then I can router around the rest. Okay, so I'm going to cut this out and then I'll be back. Alright, I'm going to give you an update. So I used my jig. As you can see, I kind of did an offset here. Now, it didn't fit when I first did the 1/2 inch offset here. As you can see now, I'm going to put this in. Let's see, what side was it? It's going in. It's a little snug, but I know it'll get in. There we go. So I don't know if you remember when I said that I wasn't going to need to adjust the router bit. I was wrong. I almost forgot. Since this piece, I only went a 1/4 inch down. This piece, I have to go a 1/2 inch down because this has to sit flush with the top. So this is a 1/2 inch thick. So this has to be a 1/2 inch down. So the top of this here, when I sit it in the hole, it's perfectly flush. So this has to be 1/2 inch. So I'm going to adjust my router bit to be a 1/2 inch. I'm going to do a little under first because I don't want to go over and then accidentally this sits too low, right? So I'm going to do a little under, test it out, and then if I need to tweak it by making a little bit more, then I can fine tune it. Okay, and then once I router this area, I'll come back. Okay, so now I have routed this around. Now you notice it's rounded though, as you can't make it square there. So I'm going to have to take the chisel very carefully and try to chisel those corners out. Now, while doing this, I'm realizing that if this isn't deep enough and I have to go deeper, then I'd have to go a little deeper and chisel those corners out again. So what I might do is, if I have to go deeper to fit it, I might just go on this piece instead and just go a little bit deeper than a 1/4 inch on that one, just to match this way. Instead of keep having to play with this one, it's easy to get around the corners here being open. So I'm going to chisel this out. Hopefully it's, if not dead on, then a little high, and then I can just go router this until it's flat. Okay, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I'll give you a little update. As you can see, I have cleaned off the corners here. This one kind of was one of the areas that I had to shave down a little bit more because it wasn't a perfect fit for some strange reason. But so, and once I routed that, I went and took this and routed this down a little bit as well. So now it should fit nice and pretty much snug, as you can see there. and it's pretty much flush now. A little bit of a light sanding, that'll be perfect. Okay, so now what I'll do is, since this may not, because it doesn't move much, it's very snug, even though you can see gaps, the corners there's not gaps, so it doesn't move around. I'm going to make sure that this is parallel, because this might not be parallel before I put the hole in. Okay, and then I will come back once I'm ready to put the router in. Okay, let's give you a little update. So now what I did is I took the plate off the router, and now I drew a line so I get the middle. What I did is I just cut a hole out. Doesn't need to be as big as this, just has to be big enough for the bits. So if you look at it, it's not quite, you know, if I put it on top here, you'll be able to see that it's not quite. See? But I put this in the center. Like these here are do not need to be drilled in. It's only the holes here on the outside that'll be drilled to the router itself. So this here is just for attachments and stuff, which I don't really need when I'm turning it into a table. So now what I did is then I traced out this whole thing, as I'm going to have to router this whole thing so it's thinner, so it's about the thickness of that at the top. And then what I'll do is I will pre-drill the holes for the router itself, where to go, and because you don't want to make it too thick, because like if you look, this is your screw, that's got to screw this onto the router. Sure, you're going to countersink it so it's flush, right? But still, it's definitely not the thickness of a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. So I'm going to router out the inside here, so this plate, or not even this plate, but the router itself can slide inside here, and then we'll screw it in from the top side onto here. So I'm going to router off probably close to a 1/2 inch, because that looks like a 1/4 inch. I'll measure it to double check, but it doesn't have to be exactly this, because when you put that screw in, get in the right one, you got more than a 1/4 inch of threading that can go into the router itself. So you only need enough that you can tighten it. So I don't have to go exactly a 1/2 inch. And then we'll go from there. All right, I'll router this out, and then I will come back. Okay. So what I'm gonna give you a little update, show you what I was doing. See, I actually attached my vacuum, my shop vac, to the back of this for now. In the future, I'm gonna make a whole system that will be underneath this that will connect to these. All my tools that are going to be put into this table. So I'll show you. I'm going to unplug this first. See that green light? I always like, if I'm going to handle things, just unplug it just to be safe. As you can see, I'll show you the bit I was using. Just a bit. You don't want it too big of a bit, so it is this bit here, the 1/2 inch. I didn't want to do too big of a bit like this, or even like that, just because I'm doing such a big area here that you don't want to force it. You want to take your time. So now what I'm going to do is I'll double check to make sure it fits. My hose disconnected, as you can see, and I just kind of went over the line a little bit there, but it's not a big deal. It's on the bottom side. So let's see if this will fit. I'm just going to throw it on even with the guard on right now. Oh, hold on here. Let me lower the route a bit. Okay, so I lowered the route a bit. My router, it's easy, just undo this lever here and then just push this button and it'll full release. So as you can see, perfect, fits in there. Got a little bit of wiggle room, but as soon as I take this guard off here again, I'll take this guard off, and so I can figure out where my screw holes are going to be. And then what I'll do is I'll drill them, and then I'll countersink the other side. And then we should be good. Okay, so let me go and do that. Okay, I'll be right back. Alright, let's give you another update. So, as you can tell, all cut out. I drilled the holes, and I use that. So I want this on the back side, my little thing for my dust collector, one on the back of the table. So now I'm going to line this up with the screw holes here. Let's see. Okay. Now, when I was countersinking, I couldn't use my normal countersink because since I made this only a 1/4 inch thick, a little more than 1/4 inch thick, if I would have used this, see how it's kind of beveled, or what do you want to call it, chamfered or whatever, by the time I got to the width here, I'm going to be through the board. So what I used is I used this. That way, see here, why isn't it not focusing? It is straight across, right? So I could make a straight hole inside. That way I wouldn't hopefully go through the wood. If I did, I'd have to start all over, or I'd have to move the screws and try again, right? So I'm going to screw this to the board, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so screwed on now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put almost like a power cord bar here, similar to this, but each, so it has an actual emergency stop. Because thing is you get this in there, you're going to want to leave this turned on when it's inside the hole, so you're not reaching underneath, turning it on and off. If I just leave it on, I can just put an on-off button here for whatever tool I'm using. I can just turn it on and off without having to reach all the way underneath to shut it off. So like a quick stop or whatever. So what I have to do is put the cord in here. Another thing I'm going to do with this is underneath, I might take these off, the little handles here. Sorry about my finger being in the way. Because I want to put a little clamp that I can just turn, and it locks it underneath the table, so it's not going to wobble around. But now, I need 2 hands here, so let me show you how it looks when it's in. Okay, so now it's in. I'm going to raise this up to see how close to the center this is. It doesn't have to be in the center. It just, you want it least close. But I know I watch other videos, and their holes are way smaller. I wanted mine bigger because of my dust collection is underneath. So I want to be able to get a lot of the dust, the sawdust that comes from the wood, to go through this, so it's sucked out by the vacuum. Okay, so let me raise it up here. Hold on. So I'm underneath. So all I have to do is I take rid of this clamp here, And then I can just adjust it here. And I can go up until, as you can see here, get closer here, as you should be able to see it moving up. And now I can measure it, how high it is. So that's about a 1/2 inch right there. And then I just go and put this clamp on again. And if I ever want a quick release, there's a little button here. And it's gone. It's right out. So see this one here, I can just leave it on here. See, just leave it on. And then when I want to use a handheld, I just go and clamp it on there. That was the downside, see? It's fully released. And now I have just that attached. So now I got pretty much 2 routers. One on the table, one on for the hand, and I'm good. Okay, so let me okay, so I gotta turn it on. So I'm just gonna leave the button on though. As you can see, there's a light there. I'm sorry it's a little loud, but I just want you to see that it'll work. I don't have my keys in yet, and I'm only holding it with one hand, so it'll get a little bit of kickback, but worked no problem. Even without the clamps, it didn't jerk, because it's, even though you see the gaps, it's still pretty tight at the corners. So there's not a lot of movement. See, can't really move it around, but I still want to clamp it down for the extra stability. So there's a router table now. You know, you don't want it, you take it out. Once what I might do is I'll probably do is just make a piece when I'm using none of them. You know, neither one of my 3 tools that are going to be in here, and I'll just put a piece that's flush for the normal table if I'm just working, right? So stuff doesn't fall through a hole, or just I think it's better off that way anyways, so I don't ruin things for the other tools. So if you have any questions about this, leave in the comment section below. Hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that bell to be notified when I post another video, and we'll talk to you later.